Hello, everyone. Welcome to Imagining the Artist Book. My name is Mark Shanker. I'm here with Richard Hackett from Tactile Books. Today, we're going to be discussing the making of books, how they're made, conceived, executed, and this is in coordination with a show that is currently taking place at the Hudson Park Library on Leroy Street. I want to first thank Emil and Miranda and Joelle from the library for hosting the exhibition and keeping an eye on the place. And I want to thank Richard Hackett, my bookbinder from Tactile Books, for sharing the discussion with me. I'm going to begin with my imprint, which I use to make the books. It's called Gravity Free Press. And imagination is weightless. And that saying really does describe what I most enjoy about making art is, and what I really think is the essence of my art, which is imagination, which is weightless. I'm going to begin with reading this brief explanation of my work, which I wrote for the show, because I think in a brief time, it explains a lot about the show. And for those who find someone reading from a screen boring, it's the last time I will be reading anything of this length. Since the spoken word was transcribed into the written word, books have been our primary means of conveying information. The book, a sequence of related pages filled with words and images, offers the artist a broad platform to explore themes and visual concepts. As distinct from illustration, artist books permit the artist a greater degree of freedom to interpret, expand, or even deviate from the text using representation, abstraction, or cultural or sculptural elements. The artist books in this exhibition are composed of text accompanied by drawings, collages, or prints, including etchings, drypoints made from X-ray film, and direct transfer monoprints. I'm not in this discussion, I'm not going to go into detail about how the prints are made unless I have some questions from the audience. The relationship of text to image can vary. In some books, the text may be suggested by the artwork. In others, the images are imaginative rendering of pre-existing text, or the text and image may evolve simultaneously. Text and image should create a unity and synergy without narrowly defining one or another. In telling a story, the images and the text must be adjusted to each other in order to maintain the plot sequence and its dramatic energy. Bookmaking is a collaborative effort. Printmaker Kathy Caraccio prints my drypoints and etchings, and bookbinder Richard Hackett of Tactile Books custom binds the pages and constructs the boxes. My digital books were designed and printed by Lenny Wolfson of Smudge Studio, New York City. So these are the basic printing techniques that I've used for most of my books. etching with aquatint, dry point, and direct transfer print. And you'll see these techniques as we go through the images in this PowerPoint. So the first book that I actually made, which took me 3.5 years, is called Traces of Sephirod. And these are 45 etchings of Judeo-Spanish proverbs. When I started this book, I didn't really know what an etching was. But over the 3.5 years, I developed some skills. The problem here was I had text, but I didn't have images. So I had to really come up with pictures, but the pictures had to work with the text, and proverbs are very, how should I say, ambiguous. A proverb changes with the context that it's used frequently, or sometimes they have very mysterious meanings. Since these were Judeo-Spanish proverbs, they were rooted in Spain prior to the 15th century, most of them. And so I had to explore Spanish culture, Jewish culture, and life in Spain up before 1492, when the Jews were expelled. Some of the pictures I drew from Goya and the Beatas de Liébana, which was a 12th century text. The picture that's on the screen now is not yet born, but already sneezing. Briefly, the way I interpreted this was a woman is pregnant and baby is kicking in her belly, and she's worried what's going on in there. So someone, to relieve her anxiety, says, not yet born, but already sneezing. What's implied, of course, is when the baby is born and it starts to sneeze, then you will really have a problem. This is the 45 etchings were housed in this leather portfolio, which we'll discuss later, Richard and I. Another proverb, this one my grandfather used, is raise crows and they will pick out your eyes. And he said that about his children when my uncles and aunts, when they didn't conform to his thinking. But he never really thought, who raises crows but crows? Another proverb, the king's jackass has pissed on my door. Well, that's a great honor, isn't it? I haven't had the king's jackass piss on my door lately, but if I did, I'd be pretty important, wouldn't I? After doing 3.5 years of etching, which was very laborious, I started to work on X-ray film, dry points. This is an X-ray film, and I just take a sharp needle and make the picture on the film and print it. And I did 35 pictures like that. And while I was working at a print shop called Manhattan Graphics Center. The other students kept saying, well, what does this mean? What do these pictures mean? And I couldn't explain them. I had no idea what the pictures were about. They just were interesting to me. And so I decided to try to find text. So in this case, I had the pictures without the text. In the other case, I had the text without the pictures. So I spent a year trying to figure out how to write text for a picture. A picture should be self-explanatory or non-explanatory, but visual. And so I spent a year trying to figure out what these pictures were about. And then in one day, I was able to write text for all 35 at one time. So this is one of the prints. It's called Houseplants. Nurture your houseplants, where they have nowhere else to go. I mean, I think it's one of the saddest things is to see a houseplant that's been thrown out on the street. They're like orphans. Where do they go? This picture is a loan. A loan, forces are suspended and the trail widens. And that to me is sort of the artistic process when you no longer have an ego involvement. Everything opens and you can see the picture for what it is. This one's called Simple Hopes. And it says, shattered dreams are recast into simple hopes. That has to do with being disillusioned. And instead of having illusions, having just simple hopes for things. Another massive project, I made a pledge to myself that every year I would do one Greek play. I would illustrate one Greek play. And in this case, I illustrated a trilogy, the Orestian trilogy by Aeschylus. Here I had the text, which were each play was 75 pages. I had to compress the text and make the text and the pictures work together while keeping the narrative going. Because I had done etching and dry point, I decided I needed a different challenge. And so I decided to do them as collages. This is a collage from the book Agamemnon. This is Cassandra's prophecy from the same book. This is from the book Libation Bearers, same book. This is from Eumenides. This is one of the spirits that attacks people who have killed members of their own family, the Orenzis. This is another collage from that book too. Because I did so many books, I worked on Proverbs for so long, I started to write my own Proverbs. Now, Proverbs are the wisdom of the common person. So I named this book Cheap Gems and Precious Rocks. Usually it's precious rocks and cheap gems, but Proverbs are the common wisdom. And so in this case, I wrote, he loved his umbrella so much, he did everything possible to keep it dry. With a tin ear to the ground, I listened to the songs of earthworms. Proverbs change their meaning depending on the context, so you can figure out what it means yourselves. The last human being on earth thanked God for his mercy. If laughter is infectious, then modern life is the antidote. So I was writing my own proverbs and sayings and illustrating Greek plays. And I decided, I have a lot of prints that no one really understands, nor do I. So wouldn't it be interesting to offer these prints to poets and see how they would interpret them? So I did a book called Prints into Poetry, and I was able to enlist 5 of New York's and Spain's foremost poets Antonio Munoz Molina, Paul Pine, Susan Sherman, David M. Katz, Robert Murphy, David Gianni, and I wrote the introduction myself. Because I collect calligraphy, I really felt it was important to have the poets write their own poetry and print it their own handwriting. So this is an example of one of the poets, David Gianni, who wrote his poem on the print itself. I went from there to do a book called Signs. I was riding in the bus and I saw a sign on a wall, and I decided I could write some signs. And so that's what I did. Some of the signs are health related. For instance, untied shoelaces are hazardous to your health. I really believe that there are many terrible accidents caused by untied shoelaces, and I felt my sign would really, save the healthcare system millions of dollars. Please turn off your cell phones during the execution. It was a problem. People were being executed and the audience was receiving phone calls. I felt it was, they could wait a few minutes. I went from that to another book, Bring Me a Toothpick. Alfred Jarry, French poet, on his deathbed, said, "I'm dying, bring me a toothpick." I felt it was very profound. A man in his deathbed asked for a toothpick. And so I did a book called Homo Absurdus, which is ridiculous. I used Albert Camus' book, Myth of Sisyphus, which I love, because it's all about someone that pushes a rock up the mountain and it falls right back down, which is just exactly the way making art is, because you do a picture and then you start all over again with the next one. And in fact, isn't life a little like that? So this picture, which I used drawings that I had done for many years, I went through hundreds of drawings and tried to match the drawing with the words. All great deeds and all great thoughts have a ridiculous beginning. The next book, which I did a few years ago, was based on my reading of Anthony Lloyd, who is an English, it's called Agamemnon, The Secret Face of War. Anthony Lloyd goes to the most dangerous places to report the wars, genocides, everything. I was very taken by his books. And let me read you what it says. It's from a book called Another Bloody Love Letter. It says, "For every war, there is a secret war, known only to those who were there. Whatever you say, however you say it, you can never explain that despite the fire, the fear, the smoke, the chaos, the killing, the madness, and the loss, there exists something far beyond the trite accounting of collective risk and mortality. The best kept secret of battle, the shared and terrible love of it all." These pictures I did as preparations for the book Agamemnon. And so I basically went and used 40 or 50 sketches that I had done for that book for the Lloyd book. I also did a book called Bach. So Johann Sebastian is one of the few composers that I can actually paint with. I'm not sure why, but I find his music stimulating while I paint. It doesn't distract me. So I decided to do a book about the qualities of Bach. And what I did was I wrote the qualities that I thought were most interesting and absorbing to myself, and then went through again drawings I'd done over the years to find drawings that correlate with the qualities of Bach. One of my most recent books, which I considered would be one of the best sellers, is called Steal the Cheese, a Self-Help Manual. And this book is really a self-help manual for mice, how to steal cheese from traps. I really thought it was, I mean, if mice were carried money or credit cards, I think I'd be a millionaire right now. I worked quite hard on the text and let me read a little bit from the text. This is the image. Research indicates that humans are greedy, hate to share food even with one another, but especially with us. These selfish, overweight psychopaths murder without remorse, then dispose of our corpses with their trash. Humans are obsessed with killing mice. Unlike cats, humans wouldn't think of eating us. We're not good enough. Also, unlike cats, which hunt with speed and cunning, humans set deadly traps. With their supposed superior intelligence, humans waste their lives inventing and reinventing better mousetraps. Despite the fact that people and mice have lived together for millennia, humans still stubbornly set traps in and around their homes, especially near our paths and entranceways. If humans weren't good providers and a daily source of amusement, most mice would have moved out long ago. I did a lot of research and interviewing of mice in order to get the point of view. And here are some of the traps that mice have to put up with here. Another book I did was, on a more serious note, The Diary of a Greek Soldier in Troy. Now, you know, the Trojan War has been written about, the Iliad, and the aftermath, the Odyssey. And it's all about heroes, great fighters, and their battles with each other, and et cetera, et cetera. No one writes about the common Greek soldier who actually was enlisted to go there. And so I did a lot of research on the Trojan War and wrote a diary as if I were a Greek soldier. I'll read you a little bit from the diary. 9 years ago, 2 officers in full armor arrived in our village to announce that Greece, commanded by King Agamemnon, would attack Troy. Soldiers were needed. The war, they said, would be short. You'll be home before the fields or herds can suffer. The Trojans can count. When they see our armada and the strength of our army, they will surrender, return Agamemnon's brother Menelaus's wife Helen, and pay a handsome tribute to avoid a merciless attack. Our prophets tell us that Hera, the wife of Zeus, and his daughter Athena assure our success. The men who join us will return home in glory with more riches than can be made in a lifetime of farming. I mean, has anything really changed? Another book I did which grew out of a book I did on disorder and discord, is called Meditations on Humpty Dumpty, or the End of the World. I realized that Humpty Dumpty was a metaphor for climate change. That if we don't do something about climate change, nothing can put the world back together again. And so I found in online text called tipping points, after which the earth cannot be returned to a priori. In this case, I did the drawings and then found the text. And here is one of the drawings of Humpty Dumpty. The last book I did before this talk is called Who Me, Yes You. So I taught nursery school for many years, and we used to play a game, go around a circle and go, who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? And then we would pick someone and they say, well, Richard here stole the cookie from the cookie jar. And the whole class would go, who, me? Oh, he would go, who, me? And we say, yes, you. Couldn't be, then who? So I remember, these games. I enjoyed them myself as a teacher. So I started working on this text. And as I went along, I realized that the cookie jar, like maybe in the old days when I was teaching, the cookie jar was really the cookies. But now that I'm a lot older, maybe the cookie jar is really a metaphor for life itself. And the feeling that who took the cookies? Who stole the cookies? How did all this time go by so quickly? And so I started to use this book in an autobiographical way, going through things that occurred in my life. So I began with who stole the cookie, and then I designated time as being the thief of the cookies, and ended the book with pictures of myself much older than when I began. So it was a book of pictures over time. The last group of books I'm going to show you are miscellaneous small books. And this, I asked Richard to make these small books. Some of them are behind me here. And I fill them up. So they're 12 pages. Now, some of them take a while and some of them are pretty short, but all of them are really more like respite. I use them to take a break without doing nothing, but doing something. It's a break from these bigger projects that I frequently begin and take a long time. And so in this, I've done about 60 or 70 of these little books, and they're a lot of fun. It gives me a chance to explore different themes. So the first book is How the World is Peopled. I can't show that in the library here. It's really, what should I say, pornographic. Yeah. They worship control screens. Third one is so many preguntas. Fourth one is by design. Some of them are abstract, some of them have stories. This one is Between Light and Darkness, that's an abstract one. Memorandum. Recent acquisitions where my acquisitions, I've combine my own work and acquisitions by the Metropolitan Museum. Hand blah, which is quite a common subject nowadays, can be hazardous. And so I get to explore a lot of different ideas through these small books. So that's the end of the visual like imagery. And now we're going to, with Richard and I will talk a little bit about making books. And there's no hard and fast rules for making books. I mean, basically, we tried to make a book, a physical book that in some way relates to the text, either expands it or magnifies it in some way. Almost everything that's used is archival, so that nothing will over time deteriorate. The materials that are used are paper, cardboard, fabric, leather, thread, glues, and every hole and stitch is reinforced to reduce wear and tear when you open the book. Richard's the expert on this, and he's been doing it for 30 years. We've been working together for 8 years. We've done something like 12 books together. And the books are either bound, and so then you can't separate the pages without destroying the book itself, or their pages are put into a box, and then you can separate and take out from the box and put on the wall pages, and display them on the wall. So there are different, a book that is bound usually has a narrative, and it goes in a sequence, page 1 to whatever, where a book that is put in a box doesn't have a sequence. It can be looked at from any sequence of pictures. You can change the order easily. Have I covered more or less the story here?
I think so.
Yeah. So let me just say, we have a surprise. I have a surprise. Richard brought a book I just haven't seen yet that he made for me. So why don't we take out the book?
Mark decided to make a 3-dimensional object.
Oh yeah, I don't live in a, how should I say, I don't live in a bubble. Like I knew that modern bookmaking now is 3-dimensional and very much abstract. Narratives are sort of old-fashioned. So I said to Richard, we have to do a 3-dimensional book for Steal the Cheese because, everybody's making 3-dimensional books. So I haven't seen the book actually, Richard just finished it. And so this is it. The text, Richard, how does the text come out? This has text.
It has a,
Wait. So we made this is from Home Depot spring, and this is from a metal clothes hanger. I did all the drawings here for it. And here's how Richard,
I don't know how to.
that's okay, Richard, they'll see. Text
Wow.
goes in, it goes in here like this. And this is really, I thought like, they say the cover sells the book. Well, I'm sure, I thought maybe the mice would really buy this book if they saw it come in this kinds of a box, you know? So we did 2 of these. I'll read you some of the text because we had to do a lot of promotion on this book. It says, free chow. And it says here, gravity-free press, steal the cheese, and don't steal the book, pay for the book. We don't want them to steal the book. And it says, got ya, got ya.
I didn't know.
Yeah, got ya. That was, I'm just seeing this book for the first time. And I'm sure it'll be a bestseller at Barnes and Noble because my customers are there all night. So Richard had to put this thing together and make it archival and make it this thing. How did you figure that out, Richard?
Well, I have to say that everything you bring me gives me a little bit of more thought than a lot of things that I usually do. I have to sit with it a while and think about how on earth I'm going to make it work and make it, sometimes it's just a pile of prints and I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. So it takes me a bit longer, as you know, to work on your stuff because figuring out how to keep it preserved and how to keep it, how to make an object that works and an object that highlights everything that all the work that you've done. It takes more time. So we started out with this, and we started out with a couple of different ideas, and then you showed up at my house with drawings, and I had no idea what we were going to do. And you showed up at my studio with drawings and prints and springs and hangers. And we bent and folded things into shape. And then I just decided to take it another direction and just use the same kind of paper that you drew on to give it more continuity. And I think it looks like you drew on the box more than just having a separate bunch of, a cloth box covered with adhered prints. So
you have to realize that I have the fun of coming up with an idea, and Richard has the work of actually making this thing into something. So I have no real idea how this thing gets made. And it's very sturdy, by the way, that everything Richard makes is made to hold up for a long, long time and reinforced and everything. And so I have terrific fun because I go over to Richard and say, well, let's do this and do that. And then Richard figures out how to do that. I'll give you another example here. When I did my book on, well, here's signs. I said, Richard, there's a sign. How can we make a box that looks like a sign or something? Richard, well, you came up with this design.
Yeah, because you were seeing signs on the side of buildings and you were referencing those. And I think what it was about was you wanted it to look like it was on a brick wall. So right. I found a brick fabric that worked. And this was the first thing I ever did for you, actually.
Really?
I think so. I don't remember. Yeah, it's the first thing. And I thought, what am I supposed to do to make a brick wall for this guy? And this is what we came up with. And it actually turned out pretty well. But again, like everything, when you bring me a bunch of stuff, I have to think about it a lot more because I do a lot of editions and portfolios for people, and I'm not doing a book for an artist. I'm doing something to contain an artist's work. But your stuff, I have to think about how I'm going to carry it out. So it's more interesting than a lot of stuff I do.
I want to just show you another one that I had this great idea, and Richard figured out how to do it. Like So I knew that when the Jews left Spain in 1492, they were only permitted to carry to take what they can carry, literally carry. They weren't allowed to take any wealth of any sort, but they could take, basically what they carried was their culture. And that was what my book was about, the culture that the Jews took from Spain and kept alive up until the present for 500 years. And I said, first I thought, well, how can I house these 45 etchings and make it work as a concept? And, Richard, we sat together and came up with this project.
I think you don't show it open, but I think it's pretty interesting form when it's opened.
Right.
And this is just, it's pretty straightforward in terms of that, but it opens up as a portfolio and with flaps, and there's cloth and paper inside. And I would say that the leather is probably much better than the leather that they were carrying, the leather valise that they were carrying. But I think it gets the spirit of the idea. So
that was
it's based on this book.
yes.
Yeah.
And even this thread didn't you dye that?
I tea stained all the linen just to give it more wear and tear look. Because it's essentially linen bands that you use to sew books on. And but I always liked this material, so I just dyed it. And sometimes I bleach it white, but for this case, I dyed
Right,
it.
it gave it almost a glow, which I really loved. And it was, so now all the Proverbs, and by the way, Richard bound the text as well into the book in leather. And it gives like a physical, how should I say, it gives a physical depth to the actual etchings, because it does by its just physicality and the material that it used, historically it's relevant to the text.
I forgot that there was a book inside. I forgot that
Yes.
I also bound it.
There is a book
Yes.
inside. Let me see what time. Let's see if we have any questions. It's 4:45.
Why don't you talk about the Orestian trilogy, the way they go together so well?
Well, this is a very complicated subject because it's 3 Greek plays, but we tried to pick colors that reflect the texts inside. So it goes from gray, dark to light, which is the book itself starts out with murders and continues with murders, but at the end has a very positive ending. And so we try to reflect that in the colors of the bindings. Together, they weigh about 25 pounds, the 3 books. Is there anything else you want to comment? Take some questions?
If there are any questions, sure.
Sure. How do we get to the chat again?
Just keep escape.
Oh, yeah. We're going to take some questions.
Click stop share on top of the red button. Nope. Click stop share.
Stop share, right?
Click on it.
I have a question.
Yeah, Edwina?
How do you decide what kind of binding to use and whether the book should be in a box or a more traditional book with pages that you turn? And I know you two confer and talk together a lot and then pick the colors and everything, but I'd like to know a little more how you do that.
Well, from my part of it, it really depends on how Mark looks at the work and if he wants it to be sequential. It's usually just a stack of prints, and if he wants it sequential, then we have to put it in a book so that it doesn't go out of order. And then I usually hinge at each print and bind it into a book so that the prints are, again, it's reversible. I use a white rice paste, and then I bind the book into something that will be usable as well as something to preserve what's going on.
A lot of times I just listen to what Richard suggests, because different ways to package the book. Richard, one of the really nice things about it is that, working together with someone that you trust and has so much knowledge, it's very easy to come up with a solution. I don't think we go through a few things, but at the end, we always agree. And that's a wonderful feeling. There's one other thing I want to comment. Richard made me aware of this. When I started doing books, I didn't have any idea about doing more than even one book. I mean, I began the first book as doodles and as a joke about my grandparents, their proverbs, and it grew into a book. Eventually, it took 3.5 years. And then, like I said, well, who's going to do another book? I did, so I, played around with another idea, more ideas, and eventually I got a couple more books. But I never thought of myself as having like overall books until I really started working with Richard, because all my ideas, Richard could put and make them into books. And as we were working over these 8 years, I started to realize, like, I really have a lot of books. I mean, I've really been making a lot of books, and my whole feeling about making books became much more serious and not in a not humorous way, but it's, I've just been making more books. I enjoy them. And I have now a pretty big library of books. So that was due to working with Richard. Someone asked, how large are the editions of each book? How few, and et cetera. So I have to admit, one of my weaknesses, probably the weakness of most artists, is distribution and promotion. I don't do that very well. I don't try to. I don't have the energy to do the books, to do the paintings that I do and everything, and also go and, sell books to people. So I do like a very small edition, like 2, 3, 4 sometimes. And basically, most of my books remain in my closet. Any other questions from the audience?
I think there are questions here.
Yeah, we're not.
Could you distinguish between an actual printed book like this one, Traces of Sephirod, and then the artist book that you made out of the original prints, the original etchings, which are up there?
Well, since I have the publisher of the commercially printed books in the audience, Mark Solomon here from Philmark Press, he actually printed this book for me. We did 1,000 copies. Mark stood over the press while it was being printed. We used 2 different kinds of paper, one for the text and one for the imagery, because the images were printed on Fabriano Tiepolo paper, had a slightly yellowish tinge, and we tried to reproduce that paper inside the book. But despite all the work that Mark and his staff put into the design and the printing of the book, the imagery still does not come close to the actual etchings themselves, which have a lot more depth and a lot more color, even though they're all black and grays, than could be reproduced in the book. So it's a completely different animal. It's like apples and oranges. You know, the original prints and the printed version, even though Mark did his best to replicate the prints. I don't know if Mark has anything to say about it, but.
Well, there's a big difference between commercial printing, press that's 50 feet long and individual prints, which are all original. But the objective of printing commercially is to produce enough to distribute so more people can have it. And there's a sacrifice in the quality because it's not original. But that book, for instance, the cover has silver foil and glossary. So there's an attempt to create something similar to the original. That's the objective, but it's always fun to work with Mark. I've been in the commercial printing business for almost 50 years, and his work is different.
But it should be noted that the originals are printed on a press one at a time. And each time they're printed, they're inked, the copper plate is inked again. So it's a very labor-intensive process where, a mass-produced book, they come right off the press and are cut down, et cetera, et cetera. Any more questions from the audience? Let's see, what is the latest project you're working on? I am playing around with the concept of doing ubuwa in America. I think we have a tyrant in America, a stupid, ridiculous, cruel tyrant. And so I'm playing around with Ubuwa by Alfred Jarry, did 3 plays. And I'm playing around with the text. I haven't gotten too far yet, but question, do you have a preferred medium when it comes to paintings that are outside of books?
Inside.
Oh, inside paintings. I use paint, but they're not, the paint is not part of the, I usually do paint for monoprints. In other words, I take the prints that I use in the book and paint them one at a time, and each one is distinctive. It's called a monoprint. But generally, I don't use paint for the books. I use other material, other mediums like crayon, magic marker, India ink, other things like that. Do you, collage, right? Do you have any upcoming shows? No, I haven't got anything planned. Is that the last
I
question?
think so.
Any more questions out there in Zoom
Can
land?
we see inside the book and how it folds out?
Well, you can't really see inside the book because
We don't
the
have it.
books are in cases at the show, and I didn't bring any books to that can be opened. But you can be sure when you open one of Richard's books, they're beautiful inside as well as outside. Are you making?
I'm sorry, I'm
What's
going
that?
to the top. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Any more questions
People wanted to know how they can get in touch with you.
with Richard? Well, the name of his, how do you get in touch with Tactile Books?
Tactilebooks.com or I have a shop on Etsy called Tactile Books Shop, where it's mostly a portfolio of stuff that I do custom work for people around the country. So either place.
Any other questions before we end this?
Do you have work in printed matter?
No, printed matter has not handled any of my work. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you thank you all for coming. And thank you for all who are listening on Zoom.